tried again by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets up center. Perry scores! Corey Perry!
Ilya able to shake away from Solani. It's given away to Solani. Around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal.
Bring the fans want one. Score! On the board! Paul Kariya!
And we made it. Anybody not live, that means nothing to you. But anybody who saw us struggle the last half an hour to try and kick this thing off, you all feel our pain and know what we mean. But we made it, guys. We're here. We're back on the weekly show. The Ducks won both their games this week and are on a 6-game winning streak. And I apologize ahead of time for anybody who has to watch this video after the fact and have Pat stare at them for an hour and a half because Pat doesn't have a webcam. So we've just inserted his face into the show to make you have to sit through that, I guess. I don't even know at this point.
It's great. It's great. It's pretty great. It's pretty great.
Everything's going fine.
If you want to,
I think that's the best picture you could put of me there. Like that's probably going to be my LinkedIn profile from now on.
And we could use it as a teaser for our watch-alongs because that came from our watch-along yesterday. So, multi-purpose.
Oh, it's very true. It's very true. So that was a lot of fun. Are we going to do those more often?
I think that's the plan. That's the plan.
Okay. Just making sure because I wasn't sure how those were going to go. And surprisingly, without question, we have to figure out what platform we're going to do them on because we capped out in the middle of the show at 2 hours with crowdcast. Like historically, our podcast has always found a way to not work in the middle of running a show. And it just kind of does it whatever it wants. So we'll have to figure out what platform we're going to move to next because crowdcast is out of the question. So does that mean we go on Twitch? Does that mean we go YouTube? What are we doing? We got to figure that out.
I'm so glad that we can have everybody live for two production
meetings.
Well,
apparently I was echoing for the beginning part, so this won't even make it onto the cut. So welcome to the show, everybody.
Oh, that's so good. So good.
No, we won't.
I don't hear any echo at all.
You know how
I'm
not going to get into this because this will act like another production meeting. But I remember how I was in before we went live, and I said, "Oh, remember when it wasn't echoing before, and now I have to do this so it doesn't echo." It went back to doing that. So perfect.
We had Eddy Inception, and everyone didn't like it.
Okay.
I understand.
Anyway, we are now hopefully error-free on the show, and we're back with a weekly update. The Ducks are 8-4-3. They've won 6 in a row. Won their last 2 games this week, which I guess there's one more game tomorrow against Vancouver, so we'll see how that goes. But we'll talk about that one next week. But how do you guys feel? How do you guys feel about the Ducks this year being fun, winning games?
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how this is the first 3-game win streak under
like
Ethan,
how do you
guys
feel?
Games.
And it's fun now, and nobody says
6.
anything.
I thought Steven was going to pop off there. It's probably my favorite thing that could have possibly happened. I don't expect this team to make the playoffs. Not at all. I don't have that expectation, so I'm just enjoying the red. It's been great. It's fun. It's nice to see that we were all right about Samston, and we were all wrong about Troy Terry mostly. So I like that.
We all? That's weird.
Yeah. Come on. You want to say that you were on this Troy Terry hype train for years and that you expected him to be so great, and now he's shooting at like 40%.
That's true.
And you think that's really sustainable? That's great.
There's literally no middle ground between you saying he's garbage and won't be in the league for long, and me going and him being apparently a heart candidate. There's literally no middle ground.
Is there ever been a middle ground with our arguments? There's not.
First of all, we don't argue. We have mild disagreements. Lovers.
So when you start shooting 13% again, and not putting up a ridiculous points pace, it's still going to be fun. He's still better than what I thought he was going to be.
Is anybody complaining about Leon Draisaitl shooting 33%?
Yeah. No, because he's a cheater. He plays in Canada, so he's cheating.
There are some guys that have high shooting percentages.
What is the highest shooting percentage for a guy who scored? I wonder who scored over 20 goals in a season and what he finished with the shooting percentage. I don't think you could find that.
I think it was Alex Tanguay. I think Alex Tanguay consistently shot over 17 or 18%.
Wait a minute, I'm looking this up right now.
Pretty sure it's Alex Tanguay.
If Alex Tanguay is like a career 55% shooter, I'm gonna die. Happy.
What is he?
Oh my god, dude!
Yeah.
His career is 18-6.
Yeah, he's got a
How many 20-plus goal seasons did he have? Decent amount. He had a few, right? Sprinkled between Calgary and maybe Colorado. I don't know.
Yeah, sorry, my computer hates me right now.
But about Troy Terry in the kind of the same sense there, I had mentioned this on, I think it was the first episode for Ducks Morning Brew, is that he could potentially be a guy who falls around 17, 18, 19% in shooting percentage just because of the way he gets to those chances. Like, he's not a volume shooter. He's only has 33 shots on the season. But it's not like, you know, the goals that he scored, he's in the right area, or he makes a nice move, or he puts himself in the best position to score possible, and he just converts on those chances. I don't think it's out of the question for him to be a guy who has an abnormally high shooting percentage. Obviously not 33%. That's going to fall down at some point. But I can see him possibly being near 20%. Like, I think it's possible for the style of play that he has.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. Like, I think there's a chance he could be in that 14-15 range, but I think one of the things that we're seeing, right, is that, like, he's increased his volume of shots, and, like, he's scoring more goals, obviously, on that, but, like you said, like, he's also getting really good opportunities, and so the question will be, as his finishing just, you know, goes down to something normal, like, is that going to affect his ability to get shots on goal? Is that going to affect his kind of going into those areas to be successful? Like, I don't think it will. He seems to be playing a pretty steady and sustainable style of play right now. Like, I don't think there's anything about what he's doing on a nightly basis other than literally just the points that's unsustainable. So I could see him settling into like 13 or 14. I don't think he'll get much higher than that, just because I don't know that the opportunities are going to be there. Like, as this team improves, I don't know that
or as the wheels come
shooting.
Off, is he going to get those same chances? Tanguay had 2 seasons, he shot over 20%? 3 seasons, he shot over 20%. 4 seasons, 5. I'm counting him 5. Shot over 20%, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a pretty special play. It doesn't happen very often. Like I said, I'm just happy with this production now. I don't think it's sustainable for the long term, but I think he falls somewhere in the middle. It is what it is. I think it's great.
We might as well talk about it now, because like we were going to get into Troy Terry and his 13-game point streak later, but if we're already talking about it now, we might as well get into it. And like, how real is this from Troy Terry then, in him being a potential 60 to 70 point player, a guy who shoots near 20%? And obviously he's not going to be on a point streak for the rest of the year, but to be in that company of a top 20, 25 scorer in the NHL, I know it's early, but do we think that's possible?
Well, I think it depends on who he plays with, right? Because, like, what him and Getsy have right now is pretty special. Like, I think Getsy's been pretty rejuvenated. Like, I think even, Stevens mentioned it, but, like, the 36-year-old is playing like he's 26. Like, he just looks like a better player than we've seen in 4 or 5 years. And, I feel like all of us have largely been pretty complimentary of him, even as the team has kind of slid down a little bit. But, if he ends up playing with, Zegras maybe then this kind of scoring is sustainable, because he'll be playing with someone that's going to do the kind of things that Getsy does as far as drawing attention, looking to make plays, and just kind of being exciting and aggressive in the offensive zone. If he slots down, maybe he plays with a Lundestrom, then I don't know that he's a 70-point player. But I don't think I would say it wouldn't surprise being between 50 and 70 points on a regular basis. And I don't think that's terrible because his defense is at a high enough level at this point that if he can hit 60 points in a season, like that's huge. So
I don't think he really is that guy. I think he's more of a 40, 50-point guy. This is my personal opinion, and it kind of goes along with what you're saying. I think a lot of the opportunities being given to him by space created, obviously with Getzlaf. Not to say Terry doesn't put in work, as you mentioned. His defense his defensive part of his game is really, really good. So obviously, there's more than just one facet to him. But I really feel like it's going to be a situation where when Getzy is no longer able to give those opportunities or they hit a slump in there, is Terry really going to be able to carry his load offensively and continue this kind of pace? Maybe not even this pace, but 75% of this pace. I don't know. It remains to be seen, but I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I think it's going to be who he plays with, right? Because, like, I'm trying. One of the things that I've been trying not to do is mention Lambert or Wright or Bedard, Michikov and stuff like that. But if this team is in a position to get one of those guys in the next 2 years, and now you're looking at having basically able to split Zegras and Terry, and still put Terry with someone who has that kind of very high, potential and upside, then I think he can be this guy, right? I just think it's going to be about what the rest of the roster. I don't think he can do this on a line by himself with Isaac Lundestrom, but I think he can be this guy. Somewhere between being a guy who can do this on his own and being a guy that can only do this with star players is where he's at to me. He's kind of right in that middle. He's not a true passenger on the lines, but he's also not I don't think yet he's a true line driver. And so it's going to be about who he's able to play with. And, look, he took a huge jump this year. It's not out of the question. He takes another one next year, and now maybe he is that guy. But I would be inclined not to count on it. I think who he is at this point is already enough to be thankful for.
Yeah, I think everything about his play this year is for real, except I think the volume of goals that he's scored. We already talked about the shooting percentage. There's no way that sustains at 33%, and I just can't see him being a consistent 30 to 40 goal scorer. I mean, he could prove me wrong, and Troy Terry's done nothing but proved us wrong over the last couple of years, especially to begin this year. But I think his playmaking is not going to change. The driving force of his play and how good his underlying numbers have been over the last couple of years has been due to his playmaking. And then for some reason this year the goals have just come. And again, a lot of that is him getting in those right areas, or kind of just contributing in a way that he finds himself, as the go-to option on that line. Right? He's playing with Getzlaf right now and Henrique. Neither of them are really shooters, and he's kind of become the go-to option on that line. And like you said, Steven, then now it depends. He's not going to play with Getzlaf for the foreseeable future. Maybe this is the last year of Getzlaf's career, right? We don't know if he's going to retire. If he goes up with Zegras, then potentially he becomes a shooting option on that line. But when you've got guys like Pastujov and Perreault coming up in the system, he's not always going to be that guy. So we could see a shift where he still puts up a lot of points, but it's more because of his playmaking. We see some more assists than goals, and he could be, just because he has a good finishing ability and gets in those areas, he could still be a 20-goal scorer. But it's so early to tell right now. And it was a loaded question to put in front of you guys to say, can he be a 60 to 70 point guy when this is his breakout year? We can look at that 2 or 3 seasons down the road and determine from there whether he can kind of be this player, because it's all about consistency. And this is the first real sample size of consistency from Troy Terry that we've had.
Yeah,
pretty much.
The thing I was going to say, right, is when you're looking at guys who are going to put up 60, 70 points, they need to do one of two things, right? They need to either put up 30 goals or they need to put up about 40 assists. And if you asked me, I would be inclined to say that I could see him being a guy who can put up 35 to 40 assists a season. The question will be how does that add up to the rest of it? How much of it is on the power play and stuff like that? Like, I think there's definitely a version of him that can be a 60, 65 point guy. I don't know that he can be that 70, 75, 80 guy. And I know, 5 points doesn't seem like a huge gap. And as we're seeing right now, like you catch a hot streak one way or the other, and that's the kind of thing that puts you over, right? Like everybody remembers Perry catching hot, hitting 50 goals and winning the Hart. Like, so, the idea that he could hit that high once or twice in his career, I don't think is out of the question. But if we're looking for what in his production is sustainable, I would be more inclined to expect him to be a 35 to 40 assist guy more than a 30 goal guy.
Yeah, I could see that. And, either way, the fact is this year is early on he is leading the Ducks to wins. He is their main offensive option, led the Ducks again over these last 2 games this week, had 3 goals and 2 assists for 5 points. And as we mentioned, still on that 13-game point streak, which doesn't show any signs of slowing down because the Ducks' best line since the start of the season and definitely over the last 10 games or so has been Henry, Getzlaf, and Terry. It's not really even close when you look at the numbers and how impactful these guys have been. And Getzlaf in his own right has started to produce offensively and had a bit of a resurgence in his career. 4 assists, was second on the Ducks in points over the last 2 games. And he's got 1 goal and 10 assists in his last 8 games. And he is, I think, one point off being a point-per-game player. So, I mean, never would have thought it would have been Troy Terry who would have revived Getzlaf's career, but they have found some chemistry, and we've talked about endlessly over the last few seasons and how valuable it will be for the Ducks to find chemistry with some of these young players. And we saw a bit of it last year with Comtois, Zegras, and Terry, and that got split up this year. And now it's Getzlaf and Terry. And Henrique's no passenger on that line either. He's contributing in his own way and still putting in points.
He is. No, he's a passenger.
He is in the sense when you look at what Terry and Getzlaf are doing on their own. But he has been a valuable piece to that line, and there's no question that they're going to be the driving force for the Ducks this year offensively. And it's an encouraging sign because I think they're still going to do well. Like, they'll tail off, like we said, Terry will tail off a little bit eventually. But we're all expecting Zegras to get going and Comtois to get going at some point. Raquel and Silfverberg will come back in the lineup. And then you've got some supplementary pieces there that are going to add to the secondary scoring on this team. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, like, this is starting to look pretty good. The pieces are falling in place.